Everyone's dying to wake up at light speed to arrive at that one universal truth that's going to bring them lasting peace and joy. But the question is, how do you actually do that? In this video, I'm going to explain to you one simple step that's going to help you advance along your awakening path without any guru BS. Stay tuned. I've got everything you need to know. What's up, beautiful? It's Lisa Roulette, and I'm here to help you heal, navigate your ascension journey, and create a life you love. If you're new here, welcome. If you dig my vibe, definitely consider subscribing. If you are a returning subscriber, welcome back home. A couple of things. If you dig the contents of this video, be sure to look at the links in the video of the description below. I have a program out right now called Purpose and Power, and it really isn't for the faint at heart. It is for people that genuinely want to understand what they're doing on earth at this time. So something you want to check out. Also, some other links below are my Amazon idea list. A lot of you ask me, what should I be reading along this path of awakening? And I have tons of books in the idea list, but also there's other witchy things that are in my idea list. So for those of you who are more into the metaphysical, esoteric side of the awakening journey, by all means, hit that. I think it's called Amazon Store, but it's not really an Amazon store. It's more of like my idea lists. So without further ado, let's dive into this idea of awakening. So one of the hardest parts of the awakening is that most people don't know what it means. And I want to remind you that the age of the guru-disciple relationship is done. Like, that's over. And it is really up to you to start to understand for yourself what spiritual awakening really is. Spiritual awakening is just remembering. That's all. It's remembering who you really are as a direct extension of one source consciousness and a direct connection to all that is. That source consciousness is often referred to as God or the universe, and some, from a scientific perspective, would refer to that source consciousness as the Big Bang. So you are remembering who you are as source consciousness or as God. But said another way, you are remembering that you are the created, the creator, and creation itself. And when you begin to remember, you start to ascend. When you ascend, what's happening is your consciousness is opening. Because as your consciousness opens more and more, or expands more and more, you remember more and more about the intricate, interwoven fabric of reality. You start to see God in all things, and you can tell that God is in and of all things, including you. So it is challenging to accept the fact that you are God because of the dogmas of our systems and our structures, particularly our religious systems and structures. But at the end of the day, you are. You are source consciousness experiencing itself. And that's really, really powerful to accept. Because when you accept that you are God and you remember more and more about yourself as God, that's when you can start to access your purpose and your power. What's your purpose? Your purpose is the same purpose as God or the universe or the Big Bang. It doesn't matter. It is to create, right? It is to create. What is your power? Well, your power is the tool that you use to create. What do you use to create? You use your consciousness. So as you remember more and more your purpose and your power, you awaken. Okay. And that's really, really important, because I think there are a lot of gurus out there that talk around the subject, and they can be many people, this guru-disciple relationship that still exists, which essentially is over, and you need to accept that it's over so that you can understand that you hold the wisdom, the knowledge, the purpose, and the power. It's not the guru. It's not. And I'm thinking of one guru in particular that I get so frustrated with, and I hesitate to divulge who I'm speaking of because I don't think that would be kind. But this individual, an extremely well-known and loved, and he should be loved, individual. But the problem is that all he does is talk around things. That's all he does is talk around things. So from a non-guru, because I would never claim myself to be a guru because you are the guru. I am the guru for me. You are the guru for you. But from a character-like standpoint, I want you not to think of me as the guru as I share with you this information. Because once you start to put people on a pedestal into a guru status, you lose sense of your own wisdom and your purpose and your power, okay? It's all in you. Another thing I want to mention before we talk about this one step to awakening is that you want to be careful to not confuse the expansion of consciousness with awakening, because as soon as people begin to wake up, they become very curious. And that's a wonderful thing because curiosity can help you to continue to expand your consciousness. However, curiosity and the expansion of consciousness, what happens is that things start to come into your awareness that didn't come in before. So many of you on this path will start wanting to know, are my chakras blocked? What timeline am I on? What was my past life all about? And these are really great questions, but those are not the things that help you to awaken. There's only one thing that helps you to awaken. Those are the results and byproducts of the awakening journey. But there's really only one thing you need to do to awaken, and that is to step on the path to self-mastery. That's it. Now, the question becomes, you have this grand answer, okay, all I have to do is achieve self-mastery in order to really awaken the way I want to awaken, in order to arrive at that one universal truth. But the reality is, you already know the one universal truth. It is that you are God. That's it. That's the one universal truth. It doesn't need to be talked around too much, does it? It is the one universal truth that everything that exists on this earth, in our universe, in the multiverse, stems from one source consciousness. And so as everything is interconnected and interwoven, there is only one. So that is the one universal truth. And the more you remember, because awakening is remembering, the more you can access the power of the one. Call it God, call it the universe, call it the Big Bang, call it what you like. But the more you can access that power, and that power is creation. Okay? And the way you create is via your consciousness. The consciousness that was born from one source. Okay? And so we develop this awareness because it's difficult to achieve, because we are so separate. We feel so separate, and the reason we feel so separate is because we have an ego. And the ego's job, especially if you've taken purpose and power, you know this, the ego has one job. It's such a simple and well-intentioned job. It's just to answer the question, if I am not that, then who am I? Which is a very different question than the statement that God, or what is source consciousness, would say. And it would be that I am that I am in and of all things. But the ego is saying, well, if I'm not that, then who am I, right? It's on this eternal quest to answer that. And that becomes very problematic and very painful. And the ego becomes the wound that we all share together. The tragedy of the human condition is the separate nature that we insist on taking part in. The separation it's pervasive, it's prolific, and it's very, very painful. But that's the original wound that we all share together, the separate nature, and that's caused by the ego. So it is the step onto the path of self-mastery that you begin to heal the ego, right? You begin to heal the negative pain body. You begin to step out of the houses of the ego, and you see not through the lens of separation, but you begin to see through the lens of the one. Now, self-mastery can be defined, it depends what guru you're turned into. And this is why I say Stop with the guru-disciple relationship. Because if you consider, say, Grant Cardone as your guru, then self-mastery to you is going to be all about 10xing it. That doesn't necessarily serve the awakening, right? Will it make you feel powerful? Yes. And I'm not discouraging anyone who follows Grant Cardone, because I think he's a wonderful mentor. And I think for the people that do follow him, he really does make an impact and help people through certain transformations they desire. But as it pertains to your awakening, self-mastery happens in 3 basic steps. The first step is accessing your personal power, which again is your consciousness. And again, if you want to understand more about this, it may be useful for you to take Purpose and Power, the class that I put together for people that really want to dive into this a little bit deeper. But it is to access the power of your consciousness. And even though you're using your consciousness every day, because essentially your consciousness is basically full of your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs, and your feelings, to actually access it and direct it effectively back to the one, you have to master the art of surrender. Now, I have a video on the art of surrender, and I will link it in the description of the video below, or you can find it up here somewhere. But surrender, we call it an art because it takes time to master. Surrender is just existing as you are meant to exist, as a human being, not a human doing. And as you exist in a state of beingness, you start to realize what consciousness is. You start to understand the consciousness body, what's in it. And let me tell you something. There's a lot of stuff in it that you probably don't want. And the thing that you don't want is the idea of separation, that you are separate from me, from your environment, from God, right? Because you're not, right? And then from the physical standpoint, it appears that you are separate, but in between me and you is God consciousness. There is nothing separate. There's nothing separate. So you have to master the art of surrender in order to access your real power, right? In order to access that source consciousness. And the biggest frustration with the art of surrender is that when you begin to surrender, your consciousness will come in like a flood. And like any flood, it can be very overwhelming. It can make you feel like you're drowning, because there's just so much information coming in. But at the end of the day, consciousness flows in a stream. It's not meant to flood. We all walk around in a big flood every day in our lives, in this sort of haze and daze, and all of our thoughts competing for attention. And our job in the journey back home to the one, back home to the source, to source consciousness, is to tame the flood and let consciousness stream as it is meant to stream. Now, the stream of consciousness only goes in 2 directions, toward love or toward fear. And when you are directing your consciousness toward fear, and I say you are directing your consciousness toward fear because you have supreme authority over your consciousness. Whether you've taken that authority or not, that's up to you. But you do have supreme authority over your consciousness, and you should be utilizing that authority and intentionally directing your consciousness toward love, not fear. When you direct it toward fear, you direct it toward separation, away from the one. When you direct it toward love, you direct it toward unity, toward oneness, and toward God, okay? So this first step in self-mastery is accessing your personal power. But you cannot really know your power until you master the art of surrender and tame the flood. Just be able to take that witness and observer position and ask, where is my consciousness going? Where is it streaming at this point in time? Knowing that you have supreme authority and you can discern whether you're going to allow it to go toward fear or you're going to allow it to go toward love. Okay? That's step 1 on the path to self-mastery, which is ultimately how you advance back to the one, or you advance along the awakening path. Step 2 is achieving unconditional love. So when you access your personal power and you start to intentionally direct your awareness toward love, you're going to want to reach toward unconditional love. And unconditional love includes non-judgment, right? understanding that everything external of you and even in and of yourself is just an expression of source consciousness. And as we have forgotten that we are source consciousness or that we are God, in the pain of the wound of separation, we make choices that can be very hurtful to ourselves and others. So in unconditional love, there is non-judgment, there is massive amounts of forgiveness, and in that forgiveness, there is a tremendous amount of the growth of empathy and compassion, okay? So let's review just to make it super duper clear. Step 1 of self-mastery is accessing your personal power, okay? So when you tame the flood and you see the streams of consciousness, then you can say, okay, now I'm going to take step 2 and I'm going to direct my consciousness toward love. And my ultimate goal is to achieve unconditional love. And I achieve unconditional love through very high levels of forgiveness, non-judgment, and ultimately through forgiveness and non-judgment, empathy and compassion grows, okay? And as empathy and compassion grows, you start to remember exponentially who you really are as a direct extension of one source consciousness. And finally, number 3, as you remember that empathy and compassion is what heals the world, you can really step into what is known as cooperation, right? It is competition that separates us even further. And we have reached a day and age, especially in the part of the ascension journey that we're on together, that cooperation has never been more important. Understanding that when we cooperate, we can drive the highest outcomes for all concerned. We stop doing things like creating systems and structures that support the uneven distribution of wealth, whereby our family members, our human family members, die in sickness, poverty, and disease. There's no reason for that. And as we cooperate more and more, what we're doing as we ascend from the 3rd dimensional realm where everything appears to be separate, and we forget and we suffer the traumatic human condition that exists from the idea of separation, we start to rise into higher and higher dimensions. Ultimately, our goal is to reach or to be able to sustain the 5th dimension, a 5th dimensional awareness, keeping in mind that dimensions are an awareness. They're not a place in time, they are an awareness. And the more of us who become aware of the one and the infinite, interconnected, intricate, interwoven nature of the fabric of our reality, the more we create heaven on earth, okay? So the ascension is not actually that we're going upward. It's that we're opening our awareness and we're actually bringing heaven downward. That's what's happening. We're accessing descending amounts of light and we're integrating them into the light body. And the more light we can embody by remembering, and the way we remember is through self-mastery by taking these 3 steps, the more we achieve the awareness of the one. And when we achieve the awareness of the one, we truly do start to create heaven on earth. That's a wrap for this video, my friends. Let me know if you have any questions or if you want me to break down the steps to self-mastery in individual videos. I would be more than happy to do that for you. Again, don't forget to click on the links of the video below to access Purpose and Power and a couple of other things that are down there. And for those of you who took Money Magnetism, that course is being relaunched by about July 1st. And I'm changing that course to be more of a gamification course to keep you guys super engaged and super on the ball so that you can begin to manifest the prosperity and abundance that you rightfully deserve. Stay in the luminosity of your beautiful light and never forget, you are loved.